All right, so we are going to start off the unit here with homeostasis and transport, which is our fourth module in the biology series. And we're going to start by talking about, why is this not advancing? There we go. What we know exactly about life, because just to kind of review, we know that all living things have to contain cells. And the question becomes, how do we know this? I mean, we've talked about how life begins with the cell, and in order to have life, you have to have a cell. But how do we know this? And this is one of those theories in science that has actually changed and evolved over time through the work of many scientists. And we call this the cell theory. So this is not any one thing that we can attribute to one specific scientist, but it was actually many scientists who combined their works to change this over time to come up with this idea of the cell theory. And the cell theory basically states that the cell is the unit of structure of all living things. So in order to have life, whether you're unicellular or whether you're multicellular, you have to have a cell structure there. It also says that the cell is the unit of function of all living things. So in order to function as life, you have to have a cell. All life processes in an organism are carried out by the cell, whether it's working alone or working together with other cells, or by the cell parts, the organelles. Now, this brings us to our categories of cells. And that cells arise from other living cells. So in order to get other living cells, you have to have a living cell to start with. The only exception to this would be the very first cells that appeared on Earth. Obviously, there had to be something that was first. So in order for that to happen, we couldn't have one that came before it. All right, so now let's get into those categories of cells. If we take all of the cells that are out there, we can divide them into two main categories. The first one are the prokaryotic cells. Prokaryotic cells have a cell membrane and cytoplasm, and that's pretty much it. That's all you're really going to see. They lack a nucleus and most of the other types of cell organelles. Typically how this is defined is they're called membrane-bound organelles, so they have some sort of membrane involved with them. This would be things like your endoplasmic reticulum, your nucleus, and some other structures like the Golgi apparatus. They don't have those inside of their cells. Examples of prokaryotic cells would be bacteria, and this is E. coli, which is something that we actually find in our intestinal tract. The second category of cells are the eukaryotic cells, and I kind of think of these as the true cells, and so it kind of creates a little rhyme, eukaryotic, true, you and true. These have a defined nucleus and those other cell organelles that have membranes with them that perform the important cell functions that the prokaryotic cells do not. So, plant cells, animal cells, even things like an amoeba that you see here, or paramecium, all are eukaryotic cells. So let's take a look here at our first worksheet, and we have two cells here. And what we need to do is we need to look at the diagrams below and label the prokaryotic cell and the eukaryotic cell. All right, I just needed to fix my projector there because otherwise I wasn't going to be able to write on this to show you. So like I said, we need to label the prokaryotic cell and the eukaryotic cell here. So if we take a look at the first one here, the one on the left, it has a cell membrane and a cytoplasm. And the one on the right has the nucleus, the cytoplasm, and some other organelles that we don't see. So that means that this one on the left is our prokaryotic cell because it lacks the nucleus specifically. And that's kind of the big tell, the big telltale sign that we have a prokaryotic cell is we don't see the nucleus. When you look at a eukaryotic cell, which is what the one on the right is, you see, if you were looking in a microscope, you would see the nucleus. You wouldn't see those other organelles necessarily in either cell, so the nucleus is kind of your dead giveaway. All right, so explain why you labeled each diagram as you did. The one on the left is very simple and has no nucleus, whereas the one on the right is not only larger, but it has organelles and a nucleus. So compare and contrast the two types of cells by completing the table. So with the prokaryotic cell, the cell membrane is present, and it is also present on the eukaryotic cell. The nucleus in a eukaryotic cell it is present, in a prokaryotic cell it is absent. The cell size, well, if you look at the diagrams above, the eukaryotic cell is large, the prokaryotic cell is small. And complexity, the prokaryotic cell is simple, and the eukaryotic cell is complex. All right, the two questions down at the bottom will kind of wrap things up with this short section. What type of cells make up your body? Those would be eukaryotic cells, because you are an animal and all of your cells have a nucleus. What type of cell is a bacterial cell? And that is a prokaryotic cell.